Hey, how are we doing, everybody, and welcome back into the SFS channel. My name is Gavin, and today I've got 5 wide receivers that I really like this week, whether it's their matchup, the opportunities they've been getting as of late, or the collection of the two. And I think in turn, these players give us a really nice opportunity as either really strong flex plays or potential lower end wide receiver 2 options in our lineups here in week 16. So we're not wasting any time before jumping into today's video. Drop down, give today's episode a like, and click that subscribe button if you're new around here. With that said, let's hit the intro and let's get started. Alrighty, really quick before we get started here, for those of you who have not seen either my waiver wire episode this week or the other episode I posted for week 16 here this morning, in addition to this one, my 5 must-start running backs for this week, I've got a fairly limited recording schedule for week 16 here, as I'm splitting time between my hometown, house, and obviously living in college, so I will be away from my recording studio on Wednesday and Thursday, so it's looking pretty limited. And then obviously you get to Friday and it's Christmas Eve, Saturday is Christmas Day. So the best way to get a hold of me is and get your fantasy advice this week is going to be through the SFS community Discord server, which is linked in the description of today's episode, completely free. You can join that up really easy. Once you join, I have to give you access and permission to type and chat in there, but I'll be checking that multiple times throughout the day, so obviously go head over in there, check that out, join that up. And then obviously the comment section, if you have questions, you can drop those down below as well, and I'll get back to as many of you as possible. But in terms of actual video content, that phase of things is going to be a little bit limited this week, and this could potentially be one of the only 3 videos that are out there for week 16 action, unfortunately. So bear with me, you guys. Be patient. I'm sorry. I apologize about it, but I'm doing the best I can here. Again, you join that community Discord server up here and get access to myself and other members of the SFS community to bounce ideas off of each other and get yourselves ready for Week 16 games. So, Amon Ra St. Brown is my first must-start wide receiver here for the fantasy football semifinals here in the playoffs, taking on the Atlanta Falcons, the 28th ranked passing defense against opposing wide receivers in fantasy football. Obviously, if you've been paying attention to the Lions here lately, Amon Ra St. Brown has been a playmaker and a fantastic diamond in the rough for this football team, a 4th-round draft pick out of USC this season. And he's coming off 3 straight games with 11-plus targets. 11-plus targets in his last 3 games. That is really impressive for a rookie receiver who's kind of come on late here. He's had flashes throughout this season. He's made big-time plays. Obviously, he was the recipient of Jared Goff's Lions' first game-winning touchdown of this NFL season, which was a pretty big deal. And he's kind of backing that up as of late. His last 3 performances include an 11-point game, a 19-point performance, and another performance of 19 points. So you're stacking positive games on top of one another here, and you're walking into a 4th matchup with a fantastic opposing defensive unit, which I think he can really thrive in here. So Amon Ra, him and Josh Reynolds have been productive in this passing game, especially as DeAndre Swift's been kind of banged up here. That's opened up some targets for other players and TJ Hawkinson. So down the stretch, St. Brown could be a really nice flex play in PPR leagues. I'd keep your eye on him at the very least and consider him strongly for that final spot in your lineups. Jaylen Waddle here taking on the New Orleans Saints, another option I like coming off the COVID reserve and having technically a second week off after week 14 was the Dolphins' bye. And this is just a situation where I think that almost any week Jaylen Waddle's out here, he is essentially a must-start player to me at this point in the season. The amount of underneath targets he gets and the explosiveness that he has after the catch make him such a viable option. The Saints defense has been very streaky this season. Sometimes they're able to send Marshawn Lattimore to the opposing team's number 1 wide receiver and just eliminate them from the game. And other times, if they're able to dynamically use their top option, move him around the field, and create matchup mismatches for the Saints defense, you can exploit this team and make some pretty big plays. We've seen teams do that throughout the year, but then we also saw the Saints last week completely shut down and shut out Tom Brady. So I think that with Jaylen Waddle playing a lot of time in the slot and having a lot of those, again, underneath looks, having, the snap to Tua and a throw straight to him out in the flats and getting run after catch. This is a situation where I still think he can succeed here. And again, if he can get into space and make one of those explosive catches, that'll be something that, of course, is very valuable in our PPR leagues, as he has seen a ton of volume here throughout this season because of that role. Additionally here, I think that the Dolphins are going to have a tough time running the football against the Saints this week. This is one of the top rushing defenses in the league. And one way to kind of supplement the run game when you're not having too much success in that phase of things is to throw short passes underneath and get your wide receivers out in space making plays that kind of emulate that run game. So if they can't get the ball rolling with Duke Johnson and Myles Gaskin in the backfield because that Saints front is posing too much of a threat, I would certainly keep an eye on guys like Jaylen Waddle and Albert Wilson, who's probably a lot less likely to be in a fantasy lineup, but someone who has also made some of those underneath plays as well throughout this season. So Jaylen Waddle, though, is the guy for me I want in my lineup. He also has the opportunity and the skill set to stretch the field just with his raw talent and route running ability. I think he could certainly still separate from Lattimore if he were to see shadow coverage in this matchup. I think that it's just a win-win because of all the different ways and variety of opportunities that he should have as a playmaker for this offense. Jaylen Waddle is certainly a fantastic playmaker. He made the list last week, but obviously got COVID, and that was shut down pretty fast there, for me at least. Brandon Aiyuk here at the number 3 spot on the list today. Now, these aren't in any particular order. If you'd like access to my weekly rankings, those can be found on sizzlefantasy.com for SFS Gold members. But Brandon Aiyuk here taking on the Tennessee Titans. He is a player who we have loved all season long. The talent is fantastic. The route running ability is there. He has all the makings of a player to be a successful fantasy asset. It just comes down to week in and week out. Does he get the opportunities? Does he get the volume that he needs to have one of these breakout star performances? I shouldn't say breakout, that's not the right word, because he's had plenty of quote-unquote breakout games this year, but the consistency has been rather the unreliable part here. The Titans are just the 31st ranked team against opposing fantasy receivers, so that matchup's great on paper. The matchup last week against the Falcons was fantastic, but San Francisco flexed their muscles as clearly being the better team in that contest. And they didn't really have any reason to throw the ball late in this game, at least in the second half, because they were completely walling the Falcons offense off. Again, if you watched the must-start running backs episode, you know they completely shut down Cordero Patterson last week, and that was something that was a bit concerning here. But Aiyuk, in this matchup, one thing that I've noticed, an interesting trend in his games this season, is that since Week 7, every time that Brandon Aiyuk has had a down performance or a performance that is not worthy of a lineup position in fantasy, he has then bounced back the next week and had a very quality performance or done much better than he did in that previous matchup. So going back to Week 7, he had just 0.5 points, so one reception, not even enough for 10 yards to gain that actual 0.4 production, just 0.5 yards against the Indianapolis Colts, and then he moves into the following matchup against the Bears where he scores 8 points. So nothing spectacular there, but still a 7.5 point improvement. And you're going from, again, that lowest of low all the way up to an intermediate low-end flex play, maybe a wide receiver 4 in your lineup or a super low-end wide receiver 3. But then things start to get better the later we get into this season. He has 3.5 points against the Rams, the following week against the Jags, 17.5. And then you go to the Seattle Seahawks where he has 6.5 fantasy points. And you move into the next week where he has 15 in the game-winning touchdown against the Bengals. So if that trajectory and that trend continues here down the stretch of this season, this past week against Atlanta was that down week. This week, Week 16, would then hopefully be that return back to those higher-end numbers and those lineup caliber plays. So Brandon Aiyuk, I've got high expectations this week against Tennessee. Again, they're just 31st ranked, so they are second to worst against opposing wide receivers. Him and Deebo Samuel could certainly have a field day. George Kittle as well. Again, what it mainly comes down to for Aiyuk all season long has been the involvement, the usage in the passing game, and the volume headed his direction. Jamar Chase of the Cincinnati Bengals taking on the Baltimore Ravens. This one, I think, is going to generate a lot of panic from fantasy owners, or I'm sure a lot of Jamar Chase owners are very panicked about this situation. Jamar Chase had just one reception for 3 yards against the Denver Broncos last week. We said heading into that week's matchup, it was going to be a tough sledding outing for Chase specifically because I thought Pat Surtain would do quite the number on him. And boy, did he ever. I mean, I didn't expect it to be as bad as 1 catch for 3 yards, but that was the situation and the circumstance of the entire game. It was a defensive contest, and both teams really struggled to move the football downfield. And at the end of the day, it was an ugly 15-10 win for the Bengals. They walk out with a victory, but I feel much better about Chase this week against a battered Baltimore Ravens secondary. They are missing key and countless numbers of starting cornerbacks in that secondary, and they are just really thin at that position. Ja'Marr Chase had one of his best games of the fantasy season, 8 catches for 201 yards and a touchdown, including a 70-plus yard slant route he ran on Marlon Humphrey for a 6-point play there, or a cashing in of 6 points in the end zone for Ja'Marr Chase. Obviously, that fantasy play was worth more than 6. But you're heading into a matchup now without Marlon Humphrey, so the best corner in that matchup is now gone. Chase had 200-plus yards receiving in that contest. Now, he is certainly not going to top that. That's not what I'm saying at all. But I do expect him to be a reliable asset. For those of you considering benching him this week, I would not do so. There is always that superlative factor and that kind of division atmosphere where sometimes we see teams that are in intra-division play have really competitive football games. Sometimes they're lower scoring. Ravens-Steelers is a fantastic example of a fantasy matchup that can be wildly unpredictable just because of the rivalry and the competitive nature of that matchup there. And we could potentially see that here with Cincinnati and Baltimore kind of vying for the number 1 position in the AFC North, and obviously anything can happen in that game. But based on the way the first contest of the 2-game series this season played out, I am confident in Chase this week. I would deploy him in lineups, use him confidently as a wide receiver too. And at the end of the day, I think he does have very nice boom potential this week. So he can only go up from here. 1 catch for 3 yards is pretty much rock bottom for what is currently one of the wide receiver ones in the overall broad perspective of this fantasy season. So Ja'Marr Chase, we'll be patient with him for another week here. Give him another shot. I think he deserves it very much so because of that matchup. And then Antonio Brown. Now we're going to put this one in asterisks here because we don't officially know if AB is going to be out there on the field and playing in this game. But taking on Carolina this week, there's a lot to like if Antonio Brown is is available for this game. Chris Godwin, we found out towards ACL against the Saints, he is done for the season, which automatically promotes Antonio Brown into probably the most targeted position on the field outside of a Gronk, because while Mike Evans might be the X wide receiver and the number 1 option on the depth chart, I think AB is going to get more looks, more opportunities to produce on a week-to-week basis, and that is obviously meaning more volume for him. So, no Chris Godwin, you're losing your slot weapon. And Antonio Brown's a very talented player. He's been activated from his suspension. There are a couple of question marks and concerns. Of course, that ankle sprain that he sustained, I believe that was 5 weeks ago now. And then the fact that, again, we don't know about his conditioning. We don't know about his preparedness to be out there on the field this week. We don't know if he'll take a full game's worth of snaps in this matchup against Carolina. But with the face value of losing Chris Godwin, his targets now being opened up for this offense, having Mike Evans, although he might be out there banged up with his hamstring issue, there is, again, a ton of opportunities for both Rob Gronkowski and Antonio Brown to be fantastic lineup plays down the stretch of this season. So someone I am highly interested in starting if he is available for us and able to start for the Tampa Bay Bucks here in Week 16. The Panthers secondary has been relatively spooky all season long. They've had, or I shouldn't say all season long, for parts of this season they've been relatively spooky with Stephon Gilmore and some other talented playmakers back there, but they've regressed a little bit here down the stretch of this season, in particular because their offense cannot sustain drives. They are putting their defense on the field and asking a lot of them week in and week out, and that's wearing them down and causing AB to play, or opposing offenses, that is, to play a lot more snaps and have a lot more opportunities against them, which can benefit Antonio Brown, AB, here this week. So, Antonio Brown, our 5th and final must-start wide receiver of this week. Put those questions down in the comment section below, and we'll get back to you guys. Go check out our other videos today, our must-start running backs, 5 of those as well, and our waiver wire episode if there happens to be some players still out there in your leagues and you're looking to figure out who to pick up for these stretch runs here. So as always, thank you guys so much for watching. Remember to join up that community Discord server, drop your questions in there, interact with the other members of the community. All that stuff will be great. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. I will see you next time. Peace out.